Okay, appropriately, this talk is called Stuff We Don't Know.
Very professional.
Seamlessly. Say right up there.
By Kim Jones. Now Kim, that's Michael Jones' family. Where is he?
Yeah.
Okay, it's alright, hold on a second. I've got a big long introduction to do. We could be here all night. Has been creating digital solutions.
Oh God.
That's what I was wondering. Barnsley Hospital NHS Foundation Trust. Why did they all have such long names? For a long time, he actually said long time. He runs Wonder Themes, does freelance design work through Base 6, and is a huge Ben Folds fan. And I hope at least some of that will make sense when we hear Stuff We Don't Know by Kim Jones, ladies and gentlemen.
Before we get started, the first thing I want to say is I've got laryngitis, but I will try and shout as loud as I can, and I don't normally sound like this. The second thing I want to say is I practiced this yesterday under the assumption that it was a minute a slide for 20 minutes. And I only realised this afternoon my mistake. So I had to adjust some notes so that I cut more than 2/3 from this presentation. But hopefully we can get through this. There's 4 topics about scientific anomalies that we don't really understand. And the first one is...
You ready to go?
Yep.
Go.
The first one is life. Now, if you imagine the Earth billions of years ago, there were little pools of primordial ooze with chemicals in them, and all of a sudden they combined to create structures like this. This is the DNA helix that people see all the time. And the idea is that chemicals, which are just innate objects, somehow combined together and decided all of a sudden that they would become life. Now, why is the question? Why did they all of a sudden move together and turn from this into something like this, which is a basic microbe that was around all those billions of years ago? We've managed to fill the gaps in after that with the theories of evolution and the way in which cells divide and function. But there's no idea what was going on within the primordial ooze back then. And we tried 50 years ago to repeat the experiment by getting big test tubes and filling them with lightning sparks and chemicals and water and heat, and finding out what would happen if we tried to replicate the primordial ooze in a laboratory. But it didn't work. It just created more complex chemicals. And as yet, there's no scientific consensus on why life decided to spring up from these very basic chemicals. And obviously, billions of years later, we've got oceans full of fish and rooms full of people listening to a very croaky man. The next one is death, or more specifically, why we all age and die. You might assume, like most people, that there's a perfectly natural understanding in the scientific community as to why people die. There isn't. The original idea was that we grow old, our cells decay, death comes along, kills us off, like an old car that we've been driving around for a long time, it simply wears out. But that's not the fact. The cells within our body have the ability to continue to fix themselves indefinitely. There's no reason why they shouldn't do that. And there are jellyfish called the everlasting jellyfish or something like that. This is not one of them, but this is the only picture I could find. which live forever. They surround the ocean, and until something eats them or they catch a disease, they will live forever. So there's no reason why it should happen to us. But we know that it's something in our genetic code. There's something wrong with our genetics that says, all right, it's time for us, our livers to pack in. It's that some theorists have called it a kill switch, the fact that we reach a certain age and the body just decides to pack in. And the reason I put this slide in is this is proof that it is genetic. This is a symptom called progeria that young children get, and they age exponentially and die very young. So the idea is that if we can cure this disease by fixing that faulty gene, we might in theory, cure aging and end up with immortal people. Moving on quickly, the placebo effect. This is the band Placebo from the late 90s. I don't know if they're still around, but I'm sure you've heard of them. What I really want to talk about here isn't this band, but more the placebo effect, which essentially says that you are able to heal yourself by taking drugs that don't have any medicine in them. For example, who takes vitamin C when they're ill? Probably everyone, but in reality there's no scientific evidence that vitamin C does anything for a cold, but it's widely accepted that it does. If you see a doctor and he's wearing a white coat and looks professional like this handsome chap, then if he gives you a placebo drug, that is something that's just sugar pills, chances are you'll feel more assured that you've been treated well, you'll go home and you'll get better faster than someone who saw someone who didn't look as professional. So really it's the brain deciding that it wants to heal your body. It's no intervention from doctors or chemicals or drugs. And if we can unlock this natural healing mechanism somehow, then we could, in reality, cure all ails without having to take serious measures. And this is a list of homeopathic medicine. And homeopathy is a billion-dollar industry built on the placebo effect. There's nothing in anything in these tablets but sugar and water, yet people claim that it makes them better. The final topic is stuff, and I put a table in here because I knew you'd all be sat at one. The idea is that everything that we can see around us is solid. It's physical, it's hard, it's made out of matter, and it's made out of small atomic structures that look something like this. But this diagram doesn't really give the scale of the distance between the centre and the outer rim, which is something along the lines of, in terms of scale that we can understand, the distance from the Sun and Pluto. So if everything that we can see in front of us, the table, our arms, legs, these bottles, is made out of empty space, then how is it physically hard? How can it be stuff? That's why this was built. This is the LHC in Geneva. It's the biggest scientific laboratory in the world, and it's trying to answer that question by looking for the Higgs boson, which it's postulated will create a field of energy. I'm trying to dumb this down in the time that I've got, but it's creating some sort of field around us that we can't detect. But that field is what makes everything hard and solid, and it's what brings the space between the atoms to be insignificant. And this is the final image that I've put up, which is an image of an echo of the Big Bang from the WMAP experiment. And this is where all the stuff in the universe came from. And the great thing about this is it shows little dots where more stuff ended up compared to the blue areas where they annihilated each other. Because in reality, and it's finished now where I'll keep going, all that stuff, once it bloomed out of the Big Bang, should have instantly destroyed itself, and then we should be left with absolutely nothing, no stuff. But for some reason, some remained, and it came to make us. I hope you've enjoyed that. I'm sorry that I had to rush it all, and I hope that you can still hear me. Thank you.
You know, some people just turn out to, they sort of seem at the start to be really, really nice, and then you go right off them and you realise they're more intelligent than you.